Megan Pedersen from Arts on Grand here. We have our new exhibit up by Cecelia Comito, and her open house is May 16th from 4 to 7. And she'll be here to give an artist talk and tell you her passion, and it'll be great. And then while you're here, we have originals from Anita Plucker that Mark has brought in, and they are 25% off for the month of May. Her prints are 50% off, and then we've got a bunch of cards left that are 5 for $5. And you can stop and get yourself an original while you're here.
I grew up in Carroll, Iowa. My family moved there from Des Moines when I was in like 2nd grade. And it was the 70s. It was wonderful in that you were in this small town, you could run around. The world was, it was the wonderful time of benign neglect by parents, where kids could just be kids, and it was great. And then, but my dream was to always get out of Carroll and go to the big city. And I did do that. And I lived in Chicago for many years, and then DC. And then I decided that I wanted to come back and just to kind of get out of the hustle and bustle. And I wanted to pursue some other interests. So I had started painting probably about 20 years ago when I was at a crossroads where my mother had passed away very suddenly, and I looked at my life and what I was doing, what was giving me joy, and I always thought, if I could do anything and talent and money was no object, I would paint. And so my sister Laura, who has always been an artist and has done nothing but art all of her life, is very driven, she said, so paint. And she bought me my first moleskin sketching book and some pencils and said, here, take a basic drawing class, learn the basics, so you won't be frustrated when you start painting. And that's what I did. And so I took a few classes at the Chicago Art Institute and then got into watercolor, and then from watercolor to mixed media. And so I was still working full time when I was in Chicago, so I was kind of painting on the side. And then when I decided I was going to retire, I wanted to focus full time on painting. And so that's what I've been doing. And so I came back here, I work out of my sister Laura's studio, artwork studio in Carroll. And I have a studio space in there, and I paint in the back. So it's funny, I never would have thought I would want to paint rural landscapes and rural scenes, and yet that's where I tend to gravitate to. And I think that part of it is that I've always found great beauty in that. I can remember when I lived, especially when I lived out east for a while, and people would say, how could you not be near an ocean? Or, Chicago has the Great Lakes, it's a big body of water. And I thought, well, I don't know, there's just something about cornfields and the miles and miles of rows of corn and all that that's kind of beautiful in its own way. And so I tend to paint things that I see in everyday life, and I try to capture, what I would call the small moments. I also love to throw a little bit of playfulness into my paintings. This painting here, which is called Petals and Pistons, last fall I went to Deal Orchard when they had the sunflowers and the zinnias were in full bloom. It was a gorgeous day. And we were walking around the fields, and they had this tractor out in the middle of the sunflowers, and I thought, I gotta paint that. So it's doing that kind of thing, playing with little pink houses and John Cougar Mellencamp and other sort of things of the kind of rural small town life. As they say, you can take the girl out of Iowa, but you can't take the Iowa out of the girl. So some things I will take photographs, and then I will sometimes multiple photographs and kind of combine them into what the final painting is going to be. I will oftentimes do a little quick sketch and watercolor sketch to sort of work out composition, make sure that it's going to work on the canvas in the way that I want to put it on there. My process of painting is I paint with papers. So mixed media is all about using more than one medium. That's mixed media. So I use acrylic paint, and I use primarily and papers that I have either found or I've printed on using a jelly plate and printed the papers and layering and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at one of my paintings, you're going to see all kinds of interesting things in there. And I like to think of them as kind of like an archaeological dig. You're going to find like a little bit of text all of a sudden, and that I didn't even know was there or didn't think about. One of the paintings in the show is called "The Door Opened," and it's of a kind of a old white farmhouse with a bicycle in the foreground. And it was called "The Door Opened" because when I had it all done, I looked at it and there was a line of text from a book page that I'd used along the stoop that said "The Door Opened." And I thought, well, that's got to be the name of the painting. So it is, it's that sort of magical process of pulling together all of these different things and also trying to preserve, interesting ephemera. I like to use, I have some of my mom's handwriting that I make copies of and gets incorporated into my paintings. My brother found a story I had written that my mother had put away somewhere, and he was digging through stuff and said, "Here." And I've made copies of that and put some of my, second grade handwriting in. I've used adding machine tapes, ledger paper, book pages. They're all books that I've rescued from the landfill, so I'm not destroying books. But it's a lot of fun in creating the papers, and then it's just painting. It's the same as when you paint with paint, you've got your palette and you squeeze out your tubes of paint. When I paint with paper, I've got my papers and they're just done by color, and then tear and glue. I work and I do some small works like a 6x6. Right now I tend to be in the range of like 12 by 12 to 20 by 20. I don't go much bigger than that, but I probably will eventually. It just kind of depends what I'm feeling and what the piece calls for. It's fun to do a variety of sizes because there are times like the little 6x6s that I do are great because they're sort of like when I can't think of anything else, I can just sit and work on that, and it's a very small space, and it's kind of a fun little to see what I can do. For the small pieces, I tend to do small birds for some reason, and birds with barns, occasionally flowers on the smaller ones, but yeah, it depends on the size will determine the subject. My artwork is also in Carroll at Artwork Studio. And right now I have 3 pieces in the Pearson Lakes Art Center for their Celebrate the Arts fundraising show, which is through the end of May. And then of course online on my website, CeceliaComitoArt.com, and hopefully other galleries soon. I would say that, as Nike put it best, just do it. Don't let your left side of your brain shut down your creative side. And I think the funniest thing I ever hear from people is they're like, oh, I so envy you, you can do art. I can't even draw a straight line. And I look at them and said, neither can I, without a ruler. It's not about drawing straight lines. It's about just relaxing and not worrying about the end result. And I think that and I would say try a medium like mixed media, because it's incredibly forgiving. You know, if something doesn't work out, I just put more paper over it or more paint over it. Some of these paintings started out as completely different things. And then the final painting is, there's a painting in the show that I think I have done, I think there's been 4 or 5 different paintings on that board. And finally got the one that, like, okay, this one I'm going to keep. So yeah, it's just to have fun in the journey and don't worry about whether it's good enough. Oftentimes people will look at art, original art, and they will hesitate about buying it. Like that for some reason it's too, I don't know, like they aren't worthy of owning an original piece of art. And some of them will ask me, like, well, do you sell prints? And I really don't sell a lot of prints because, to me, buy the original. And the prints will cost, if I did really quality ones, you know, as much or more than some of my originals. And so I like to encourage people to collect art from artists, whether it be me or any of the other artists. It's an incredible investment to make and can give you such joy, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. You're worth it. Well, they should come see my work because it's amazingly gorgeous and fun, and I think people will enjoy it. And they should, even if they don't want to see my art, they should come to Arts on Grand, because what an amazing, amazing amenity for a town the size of Spencer. You know, I'm from Carroll, which is 90 miles south of here. We are so jealous of Arts on Grand. It has incredible art from a bunch of artists from Iowa and other local areas, and the classes are pretty amazing. It's just a great facility, and if you haven't visited here, you should. And if I'm your excuse, yay!